Thanks. Howdy. You?
Yeah, but he's part of it.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this regular meeting of the Cowlitz County Board of Commissioners. I'd like to invite you to stand if you're able to and join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we will have our consideration of the minutes from our meetings last week. Mr. Mortensen.
I reviewed the minutes of the activities last week and I move to approve those minutes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I also vote aye. That motion carries. Next, we have our consent agenda. Although before we do that, I would like to say it's good to be back. I spent last week and a half or so traveling on your behalf, Washington, D.C., making contact with all three members of our congressional delegation to share with them issues of concern for us, all the way from sediment retention structures to water supply for Riderwood and other transportation needs in the community. I'll have more information about that a little bit later. So in our consent agenda today, we have a number of different items. Typically, we consider those on the consent agenda with a single motion. However, if you would like us to consider any of those items separately, all you have to do is ask and we'll pull them from the consent agenda and discuss them after we deal with the rest of the consent agenda. So the first item is a request for proposal for homeless housing and assistance. That's a hearing scheduled for April 11th. That would be a program to assist either one-time or startup costs for projects or programs focused on housing and homelessness. The next item is a certification approval for the 2023 road levy and estimated revenue produced. That's basically paperwork that we have to submit to the state every year. We have approved the levy that was done last fall, and they've done their estimates. We have a 6-year plan with at least an estimate of what we expect to spend this year on road improvements and maintenance. Item number 3 is an agreement approval with an organization called Environmental Science Associates. They will be doing environmental service work for various public works projects. We oftentimes, as part of the permitting process, have to hire specific experts. And so we do have these agreements with a number of different contractors, not to exceed $100,000 this year. Next item is a Memorandum of Understanding between Cowlitz County and Local 334 for the county's employees union. That's to create a mechanic training program for ASE Mechanics. So trying to upgrade the standards for the folks who work on our vehicles in our motor pool. Item number 5 is an amended approval of the Consolidated Diking Improvement District number 1. Normally, the junior taxing districts like Diking districts have to at least submit their budgets. In this instance, the Longview Diking District, that's CDID number 1, has made some changes. And so we're just recording those changes. We don't approve them. They're separately elected body and independent for the most part. We just have to record their changes. And then under our letters and correspondence, we have made some appointments. Ryan Olin has been reappointed to serve on our Stormwater Advisory Committee. That again is a county-wide organization that reviews the stormwater rules and regulations. Federal government's Clean Water Act authorizes states to approve stormwater strategies to make stormwater more acceptable when it gets pumped into the rivers. And of course, for those of us who live behind levees and dikes, that stormwater has to be dealt with carefully and according to the law. We are reappointing 2 members to the Planning Commission. From District 3, Charles P. Hill is going to be serving for another term that will be expiring in January of 2027. And Joel Rupley, he is from District 3. And from District 2, Joel Rupley is being reappointed. His term is expiring at the end of January 2027. And we've also received yet one more report from FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, as they continue to review the safety conditions surrounding the dams along the Lewis River. And a latest update, there's been an inspection of the Yale Dam, is that huge arch dam. It's that's kind of pretty alongside that bridge going over the river and the parks there. That has to be inspected, and we've just been informed that it has been done. And then periodically we do announce to the public that our proceedings are all on record and can be obtained by anyone making those requests. And the last item under our consent agenda today is a notification from the auditor's office that last week she paid $2.4 million in various claims and vouchers. Again, their staff reviews to make sure all claims follow the rules and policies of the county. And it varies from generally about 1 million to sometimes as many as $5 million. Just depends on when the projects and the bills come due. Are there any items that I can answer any questions for, or any items you'd like to have separately considered? Good morning.
Thank you, Commissioners. Item number 1,
Mhm.
I'd just like to see how we're going to get transparency and visibility and ability to do due diligence for you and us. Do you know around how much is going to be coming in on that? And when will those be visible for us to look at?
So I believe Gina James is in the audience. Gina, can you just give us an update on the particulars, what we're calling for this meeting?
Hey, good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. For the RFP, the bids, we don't know what to expect. We're opening it up. It's sort of a broad RFP so that entities could submit a proposal to address housing or homelessness. The board will consider all of the proposals that get submitted. So we'll, at the bid opening date, is when those will be read out loud in a public meeting. It would be like at the end of a public meeting like this one, where the public will hear all of the proposals that are submitted and the costs that they've submitted for. And then we typically schedule a work session with the board where we can get into more details about those proposals and what they look like. So we don't know what to expect, but.
Yeah,
So this does include some language that we talked about earlier in workshop. And I
Mhm.
know one of the areas that we were hoping to get a response for focused on homeless youth.
Youth, yeah.
Right. And we hadn't really done anything like that before. So that was kind of, if you're interested, now would be the time to do that, or any of the other programs that we have considered
Yeah.
in the past, right?
right. And we tried to leave it fairly broad, and we actually took a couple conditions out to make it a little, it's still an onerous process, don't get me wrong, but to make it maybe a little more palatable for even private enterprise to take a look at it and do some things. So we've tried to broaden it and make it a little bit easier. But personally, I'm hoping typically we don't see many, but hopefully we see more.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate the process. Oh,
And just one other question. Can you share with us both what the annual income is expected for this year and what the grand total is? Because I know we still have some reserves that we haven't spent out of that fund.
Sure. In 2022, the document recording fees, the revenue from those was about $1 million. But we did have some built up in reserves. When we subtract what we have obligated in contract, we have about 2.7 million in reserves. And I anticipate it's hard to project for 2023 what the revenue will look like. It could be around $1 million. It could be a little less. It could be a little more.
Well, actually, For completeness on that, don't forget the city of Longview will pull out its portion, which is estimated at 300K. I'd also like to continue a little bit. That was a good question. I had that in mind. Tell me what time, by what date are the proposals due in?
They are due April 11th.
So on at 11 a.m. on April 11th, we are unlikely to do any approval.
Correct. That would just be reading out what proposals came in.
Correct. So I would change the language from approval to presentation or discussion or something. My main point is here that I believe the public needs to have plenty of opportunity to examine the proposals. And we can't do that if we opened them at 11 and we approved something.
Yes, thank you. It is listed under the section of the agenda called call for bids, and the way it was worded didn't sound like it was a call for bids. It was a call for a proposal or approval. Thank you.
Right.
Make sure we're very clear on that.
Very good. I appreciate that. That frightened me, approval, and
Okay.
dumped on us all at once, but I appreciate the process, a work session and doing, and this does not include any home funds or CBD, the others, right?
No,
That's
this is only document recording fees.
Okay.
Any other items?
Let me continue while the gentleman makes his way up. On item number 5, we also use the term approval. And Mr. Chairman, you suggested we don't approve them, we just acknowledge them.
Right.
And then on the board correspondence, is it Charles P. Hall or Hill? You said Hill, and I can't remember myself. Maybe the clerk can straighten this out.
Oh, it is Hall.
It is Hall?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
sorry about that.
Good
Yes, sir.
morning.
Good morning.
Items 3 and 4, I don't see any dates on there. Are those for the calendar year 2023?
Mhm.
Both of them?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other ones?
Good morning. On item number 1, a question, I don't know if I heard this properly or not, but did someone say grant? There's grants involved in this money also, or is it,
So the state of Washington taxes documents that are recorded, primarily real estate documents. It's now up to about $200 per document. And those document recording fees, they call them fees, they're a tax, but the fees. They are collected by the state. We get a share of that money to address homelessness and affordable housing according to a plan that a citizen task force has developed. And so this is just implementing that state law.
so how
So
much?
the numbers that she quoted are the results of that particular document recording fee program.
Excuse me, how much more is anticipated that would add to my annual tax bill or to our annual tax bill?
I mean, it wouldn't appear on your property tax bill. But if you're transferring property because of sale.
Yeah.
It'll be on those, that thick stack of papers that you sign, and it'll be listed as one of the tax expenses for that.
And what kind of, how does Washington State how do they hook into us? What do they put on conditions for this? Washington State going to make conditions for this housing program for these homeless folks? I mean, I agree we need to deal with homeless, but I'm terrified of what politics does.
Yeah. My impression, and we've been through a number of these rounds of proposals, and it seems to me there was some kind of a stipulation for something called coordinated entry as some type of a requirement. Coordinated entry is is a program where people who are applying for homelessness assistance are assessed and theoretically assigned to an agency that's best suited to deal with their particular needs. But other than that, other than, they have to be consistent with this plan that is locally generated.
I think I can help clarify that. There are two aspects regarding what conditions are on the money, of course. And there are several RCWs, and Gina James can speak to those in her sleep. Pertinent to your question of what kind, is this a grant? It is money collected by edict, and we get a portion of it. By the way, that money collected is $203.50 per recording, but that will go up very likely to by $100. And I noticed that that the auditor has her hand up, but hold on a second. I'm still going through this. So a thing to notice, and we've had a discussion, and certainly Rick Dahl has mentioned there, we're very reluctant to use these funds to pay operating expenses. So we look at that as not, however we use it, we do not want to cause you additional expense that will appear on your property tax as us increasing more, as if we could do that anyhow, because we've got a cap. If you think this is all intertwined, welcome to the government.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Anyone else?
You've got a hand up.
Yes. Good morning, Ms. Fundingsland, our county auditor. She's the custodian of the document recording fees that we receive.
Good morning, commissioners. I appreciate you giving me just a minute to talk about the document recording fee, because Arn is right. That fee is scheduled to go up, and I wanted to let your audience know that there are a number of ways that they can be informed and also be proactive about this. Auditors are definitely testifying on the Hill, stating our concerns. We have submitted written testimony about the potential impacts that the additional fee will have on our citizens in Cowlitz County, but it is, it's not making an impact. So I wanted to give just a couple of quick facts. If people would want to write down the bill numbers, this bill is House Bill 1474, and it has a companion bill, Senate Bill 5496. Like I said, this is an additional $100 on the document recording fee that the commissioners nor I have any control over. When the state mandates something like this, we are simply the arm that collects that fee. And what I wanted to inform the public was that this bill, even though auditors have gone on record as saying this is a crisis for our constituents here, there are currently 44 House members signed on as sponsoring this bill. It has passed with flying colors out of committee, and it is currently scheduled for a public hearing on February 22nd, which is tomorrow at 1:30. If citizens do not know how to get involved, please contact me, but I highly recommend that you should go to ledge.wa.gov, sign up so that you are getting notifications about bills on topics that are important to you. You can follow particular bills so that you know anytime there's a change, you know when hearings are coming up, and then you can sign in. The legislature is allowing remote testimony. You can sign in, you can testify, you can sign in and just state your position, whether you oppose or approve. I'm going to get off my soapbox. I just wanted to urge you to get involved, and I wanted to help you in finding a way to make that happen.
Please repeat the bill number again.
Bill number was HB, that's House Bill 1474, and Senate Bill SB $54.96. And that would be adding at least $100 more to the document recording fee.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that $100 goes for, this is not for homeless housing. It's labeled with housing, and so we automatically assume that it's for homeless housing, but it's to create a covenant homeownership account, a program to address the history of housing discrimination due to racially restrictive real estate covenants. This is a fund that will be a complete program that will be created to help those Black, Indigenous, and people of color purchase and come up with their down payment and closing costs to be homeowners. So just want you to understand what that's for. This is not an additional $100 for homeless housing. It's a new fund, again, completely out of our hands. And us auditors are feeling like this document recording fee is the new hot funding mechanism for the legislature, even though, not yet off my soapbox, sorry, Dennis Weber. We have been researching, and in our research, Washington State, we have not found another state that has a document recording fee as high as ours, not even New York. So at $203.50, we're already one of the highest, if not the highest in the nation. And we're looking at adding an additional $100.
Yeah.
Please repeat that website that we go look at. I couldn't write that.
Yeah. Ledge, leg.law, LAW nope.
Ledge.wa, leg.washington.gov.
Thank you. Commissioner Dahl is our representative with the Washington State Association of Counties Legislative Steering Committee. Any additional comments? I imagine last week that was a hot topic.
Well, they talked about that. The per mile road tax was probably the hottest topic, but you know, when you print it takes 85 pages to print all the bills that are up there to help you. The other thing you need to know about these recording fees is the counties that raise them through stealing them from their people that are transacting business, they don't get 100% of that back. You'll get a percentage of it back, but you'll never get the 100% of it back. They keep their cut, and then they tell you how you're supposed to spend it. So it's really, your hands are tied with it. You guys pay for it, but then they tie your hands on what you can use it for.
If I might, in the past, I've mentioned that any of these kinds of meetings I've gone to, and I haven't been to that one at all, the general tone or direction or focus, whatever you want to call it, is in get me more money from the public. Is that what you saw there?
The general tone is the county's always looking for more money. Yes. And I'm probably one of the ones that go, just maybe leave us alone, quit passing all this nonsense. But yeah, Commissioner Mortensen's right. If you were to poll the 39 counties, the majority of them are always looking for more funds.
Any other? Yes.
Yeah, so regarding these bills, et cetera, and with you, Commissioner Dahl, please stand up and holler and yell whatever you can. We are here to support you. This is a double whammy. It's adding more and more taxes, and it is a very progressive, discriminatory bill. It does not represent the public. It's discrimination, and it should be challenged in court.
Yeah.
All right.
I have no issue standing up and opposing.
I've always found that Cowlitz County has been very open-minded, whether it be their segregation. We were one of the first to send students from the Olympic edition over to Broadway to even out the student population so there wouldn't be people of color on one end of town or of income status. That happened back in 1962. I was one of them that wasn't allowed to go to my own school that was 2 blocks away from where I lived. I was sent over to Broadway. So where I'm coming with this is this race theory and all of the rest of this new age language really doesn't apply to Cowlitz County. I have gone on in my adulthood to work at Weyerhaeuser. I worked on the green chain right next to other individuals who were still speaking Vietnamese. They came across in 1977 and were becoming acclimated into our area. They were actually back in those times, the churches did sponsorship of individuals so that they became acclimated and knew what our culture was. And these people were quick learners and becoming part of society back then. So how I see this as a citizen is this is making a desk job for other people and more of a hindrance. That $100 fee may be just the tip of this race theory and equity. So perhaps it may come down to that term. Another gentleman has said that we may have to hire legal and have them prove that we're guilty of this. We're not racist.
Thank you.
If I might make a comment on that, the problem with all of these plans where we can sue back, we are going to appear before the same set of people who are pushing the agenda. So the chances that we prevail is virtually nil, regardless of how much we spend or whether we get Barry Mason as our attorney.
Good morning.
So we're going to solve racism with a racist policy. Is that right? It's like.
That's what you
Didn't
heard.
we go through affirmative action and we found out that, it really doesn't help anything? How many times are we going to do this? Now, I'm not picking on you guys because we know this is coming from the Democrats. This reminds me of when I lived in Alaska. It's like you had, gosh dang, all of Alaska, and then you had Anchorage. And Anchorage is where all the people lived, and that's where all the goddamn Democrats were, and they ruined everything. Finally had to leave. I won't have to leave my state, but did I hear something about Asian getting mentioned into this new policy? Was there something about Asian racism and helping Asian people? Because my wife's Asian, and I was thinking, might get a new house out of the deal, take some advantage of the situation. But this is just more of the government getting out of its lane, but we know where it comes from. It's gosh darn King County and above, and it's like, I don't know, how do we find a point where we can stand up to these guys? Because it didn't work for us in Alaska, and I got the feeling that we're losing ground every day here.
So we have, at the risk of continuing the bird walk away from a request for proposals for the use of that dollars.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the other thing I was going to say.
do-
Thanks for reminding me.
I do tend to agree with you that those who control state government are in the Puget Sound area. And that just remind me of something we learned in talking to Oregon delegates back in DC, and that is that there are quite a few counties east of the mountains that have joined in a coalition to shift the Idaho border westward and leave that state because they're under, the same kind of saddle orientation that we are with Puget Sound.
Well, the governor was all for chop and chaz. Maybe we ought to make our own little Cowlitz County chop county. You know what I mean? We'll just be our own country. Now, just a minute, you touched on something and I wanted to bring, oh yeah. Okay. So this request for proposal, right? So we're going to get some organizations in here and they're going to be proposing whatever, and they're going to have a big administration behind that gets financed through that, right? Kind of like how CAP does stuff, they get a bid and then they do it, but 10% goes to their administration fees. And so what we're going to do is be like creating another little sub bureaucracy around here where there's going to be somebody making, how many thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to like run the building next door for a while there. That failed. And, you know, is there a limit on how much they can put in a proposal and then have a big administration fee to go with that?
The only thing I would say to that is we tried to make it very clear that we weren't interested in funding operations of whatever they do. That we would prefer to look at funding a capital, but the operation needs to operate by itself. Otherwise, why is it even there? I don't want to get into funding an operation because that never ends.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that we won't see that in a proposal, but we've tried to make it clear in the request that that really is not our interest. Our interest is in getting you a property or whatever type of capital thing, and you take care of the operation.
I repeat, it's hard to state or define upfront what will be the litmus test, but I can assure you, we will go over the proposals with a fine tooth comb and answer all your questions on it.
Tim, you actually hit on something that I feel pretty strongly about, that is so critical about the county getting involved in these kinds of things. And that is, you mentioned, when that program failed, it went away. Okay. It took Cowlitz County government to defund Love Overwhelming to get them back in their own lane. Now they're still around and they still get grants from the state. We don't have control over those that they get directly. But at least when we go through a proposal like this, we have a level of control if we're willing to, you know, follow the guidelines and set forth. So to me, that's exactly the essence of having local government. We do have the opportunity to rein in some of the programs.
Yeah, good. Well, that's why we voted for you guys.
All right. Anyone else? Okay.
You have a hand up also, a friend of yours.
Oh, okay. There we go.
You just made a very important point in looking at all of the submittals. I hope that in your request for proposal, there is a breakdown sheet that clearly states the percentage for administrative fees and others as a summary of the entire proposal. It says how much really gets to the bottom line and et cetera. You can request that as part of the submittals.
I don't agree with that approach. Our focus is on the final product. How they get there is what they're going to propose. If we believe that they can get there and give us a super product with a 50% overhead, so be it.
All right. We do have somebody whose hand's been up for a little bit. Let me call on Diane Cooper. Diane, you're on.
Thank you. I
Good
just
morning.
wanted to ask the commissioners if you could let all of us voters know what percentage overhead does the county run at? Last I was in the loop, I believe it was north of 25%. And that money comes off the top of any money that my understanding is comes off the top of, for example, the document recording fees. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, where is Carolyn? You know, frankly, trying to talk about overhead is one of the most complicated things around. You have to have a denominator in order to do the computation, and what you put in the denominator is strange. If I were in the private industry and I had 100 employees doing a job, and then I replace those 100 employees with a machine, I would shoot my overhead way up, but my total cost would go down. So anyhow, maybe off my soapbox for Ms. Funding's line.
Okay.
I was
Morning.
just gonna reply to that comment that Cowlitz County technically does not get an overhead. This is something that either we elect to do, are allowed to do only on specific grants. And when you're referring to the document recording fee, the out of the 203.50, $5.65 is used for the county for administration purposes, and that's less than 3%. So.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Commissioners. I wanted to offer another perspective on that House bill to address housing equity in our communities. Some of this information was new to me relatively in the last few years, so I thought I'd share it here in case it's helpful. My understanding from some real estate agents I've spoken to in town is that there are actually still homes, deeds for homes in the Old West Side that have as part of a housing covenant that people of color cannot own those homes. I also learned as part of one of the clergy in the community that when R.A. Long came here, he started Longview Community Church as a church for the whole community, but he was Disciples of Christ. So then he built the Disciples of Christ Church for him and his community. And then he built a church in the Highlands for poor folks, poor and working folks. And then he built a church for Black folks, House of Prayer for All Nations. So I call attention to that because it's not like any of us made those decisions years ago. And I know all of us are making complex decisions, and they were back then too. But that bill sounds to me like it would be a common sense way to address some of the inequity that still exists because of some of those things that are in our root system that we can't change by going back in time, but we can address them by helping families of color have some benefit that they didn't get, creating generational wealth from getting to own property in one of the most desirable places in our community. So I wanted to offer that. I'm happy to provide some more information about that over email to you if you'd like to hear some more historical information. And I think about it especially as Longview is going into the centennial year. That to me seems like a beautiful way for us to come together as a community to support each other, to build a place where everybody can thrive regardless of their skin color. So wanted to share that perspective.
The race-based covenants were pretty typical across the nation in those days. Zoning by race was very, very common. And you missed one race-based neighborhood that was developed, and that was the Longview Japanese community, had a similar designation. But I will hold my tongue rather than give a history lecture. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion then for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented this morning.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, plus the vouchers and warrants in the amount of $2,411,735.88.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, were we intending to clean up the approval statement or approval words?
Yes. We'll just include that. The approval is not our approval of those items. We just receive them.
Right, so we will amend. So when I review the minutes, I will look for that to be
Absolutely.
changed.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Just a second, I see a hand. You do have a hand up, but I don't know what to do in this case, Mr. Chairman.
They're just questions and answers, I think. Oh, Kim Smith. No, go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My concern or comment isn't on this bill. Is this the appropriate time to speak on a concern?
We are.
Probably not.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, when
we're right in the
is
middle
it?
of a vote. That's
Okay,
want-
excuse me. Go ahead with
That's
your
okay.
vote.
keep that in mind. Yeah.
And
Okay,
then,
so those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 I also vote aye. That motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. Next, we have regular motion items. We have 4 motion items. And then at that point, we'll have citizen comments. Okay. The next item is from our Information Technology Department. It's a bid award to Worldwide Technology for the replacement of an existing telecommunications system with a VoIP system. And here to talk us through this $500,000 proposal is Kim Hort. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kim Hort, IT Director. Good morning, neighbors. This is kind of following the same sequence where we went out for bid in November of last year. We received 11 proposals, a combination of different vendors and different platforms. And last week we workshopped with the commissioners. Worldwide Technologies was the top of our 3 picks. So the commissioners asked that I provide some kind of visual presentation to kind of go over our legacy system, what we're choosing to go with, and just kind of a cost analysis. To get started.
All right.
Our legacy system is antiquated. We originally purchased our Avaya equipment. A lot of it was refurbished, and we were trying to save costs at the time of deployment. It was originally initiated in 2009, and then we bought more infrastructure in 2014 to 2016. The problem is that, again, trying to save costs, there was a delay to where this project didn't truly get off the ground until 2020, resulting in a significant labor cost. So if you look in 2020, that big red bar is the overhead for labor cost, overtime, and whatnot to deploy an already antiquated system. And kind of going back to some other key points, this infrastructure is at end of life. We don't have the tools to monitor it. So we literally had a server go out and we informed our vendor who had no idea. So essentially, we want to be proactive and address and rebuild our infrastructure. And that's what the Worldwide Technology is, our selected bid award. Any questions about our aging infrastructure?
I noticed the company went bankrupt too.
Yes.
That
Mhm.
never helps. Any questions for staff?
Do you have any estimate of, see, if we don't buy it, we're going to end up with all kinds of issues, but also the costs are something we know about.
Sure.
And those costs, as I recall, were pretty sizable per year. Do you expect them that they would stay approximately the same level so we could almost compute a payback?
You're getting to the
period for
good
system?
part.
A big part?
You're getting to the good part. You're cutting ahead of the
Oh, I'm sorry. I
apex of my
thought you were-
presentation. But yes, just teasing. So in my analysis, our licensing costs, which is the blue bar on the far right, we're averaging about $57,000. That's for us to use the system that we have today. And as Commissioner Mortensen kind of spoiler alerted, kind of going into just a cost analysis between the two. Again, this is just the graph on the left that I presented, and then on the right is what the Cisco system. There's going to be an initial investment of where we're purchasing infrastructure, and then you can see down for the following years, we're going to average right around 50. So we're going to get a new system which is going to cost essentially less than what we are paying for today. Did that answer your question? So Worldwide Technology is proposing a product called Cisco. We do have a Cisco engineer on our team and just a healthy group of workers that I know can deploy this within the timeline that we're going to present. Again, this is just accepting the bid. This is not the official contract, but these are some of the key elements that we pulled from it.
Can you share with us just a little bit of how we go about collecting that money? It seems like an awful lot of money.
It is.
But
So we have an IT reserves fund. And so what we do is we set money aside over the years to address things such as like enterprise software, And this is something where we're setting money aside for infrastructure. So this is funds that we've set aside for a rainy day.
And that comes from all the various departments that use computers.
Correct.
So it's based on per employee or per computer?
Currently, it's based off of computer. I'm looking to readdress our cost analysis because I don't feel that that's appropriate. The reason being is that there's other departments that use other infrastructure elements such as our time, server. There's departments with a lot of data that we're storing, which ages our infrastructure as well. So currently it's based off of device. So that's essentially how we earn our money and our salary.
So then we collect a little bit of money every year to build up a reserve like you're
Correct.
talking about. Thank you.
Yes. So the new system would allow us a high availability, which means that there wouldn't be an impact like we have now. We have to notify departments such as Cowlitz 911 saying, hey, we're rebooting gateways. And we have to do stuff like that every 90 days. This new system would allow us to simultaneously update without impact to our end users. And one of the huge things that I feel like we're lacking in our system is the E911 location management compliance. There is an additional $25,000 as an optional item. Commissioner Dahl was asking about that this morning. That is addressed in that cost analysis. So I broke things out into kind of like some of the resources and what our infrastructure is going to look like. Apparently it doesn't want to update on that screen. Just kidding. So to us in IT, this is kind of like, I don't know, the sprinkles on the cake. I love the visual diagram. So this is the infrastructure that was proposed to where we would have our main configuration, and then we would have essentially like a backup, a failover. So again, focusing on sustainability and ensuring that we don't have any outages. And if I'm going too far into the weeds, you guys can definitely just shush me away.
So is it true that I saw 3 clouds in that diagram?
Yes.
Okay. So we're utilizing cloud services to store.
No, not in this case. This is actually an on-premise system.
Okay.
And then just to kind of entertain, I brought up some pictures of the hardware. I know Commissioner Mortensen was asking questions about the physical infrastructure. And I put little green check marks because I know they're Lance approved. They're Cisco products. And these are enterprise equipment. So they would last us a good while. And then for liability purposes, again, going back to regulations, there's Carey's Law, and there are requirements under the Ray-Bombs Act where we have to have particular things. And I broke things out into the main categories with little asterisks associating to what law they apply to. I know, exciting stuff. I get excited. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Commissioners, thank you. I understand this is the operating system side of the house.
Correct.
And I'm unaware of what Cowlitz, I'm on Woodland, I don't know what's going on. So do you have an ER&R program for replacing physical units, computers, yada, yada?
Mhm.
And how does that work here?
So for devices like laptops and computers, we have a 5-year life cycle, which is kind of pushing the average.
Yes.
They typically say that 3 years is kind of the recommended, but we try to extend our dollar by doing every 5 years. I'm new into the director role. I've hit about 1 year. And I noticed that we don't really have a good life cycle for our infrastructure. So we're trying to re-establish good efforts and due diligence and making sure that we set money aside for those updates, because technology, wear and tear on the equipment and stuff like that. So we're trying to be mindful of that life cycle.
Does that keep in mind laptops, phones, iPads, various that people have?
Yes. Mhm.
And what kind of a monitoring system is in place to ensure it's being used properly?
Yes, we have multiple systems. One that comes to mind, it's called CASE, and we actually monitor and inventory devices through that, such as our laptops and computers. We went to Office 365 and are leveraging Intune for our mobile device management, because in the past, cell phones and iPads and tablets and such were not being monitored. So now, as we move forward and implement new technology, we're using those tools.
And in this 5-year plan for equipment, it seems a long time from technology, probably more 3 years is probably more accurate. But where does that money come from to replace that equipment?
Sure. As we discussed, we in IT bill out our
Okay,
costs
all right,
for
yeah,
infrastructure, which
it.
includes salary replacement and whatnot. So departments, for example, the commissioner's office, that they have 10 laptops, they pay each year a replacement cost for those laptops.
So all departments within the county, the police department.
We pick on all of them.
All right.
Mhm.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners.
One of the other things I know that the department is very active in monitoring and working with employees, and that's the whole issue of cybersecurity, phishing, and trying to make sure we don't get taken advantage of. And so appreciate those efforts as well. Good morning.
Good morning. So my disclaimer is, I think it's wise and good to look at staying upgraded and updated on these sorts of things. I mean, this is why we're able to stay home and watch and participate from home. So yay, hey, for not getting hacked and all that good stuff. In September of 2021, this board passed a resolution involving vaccine mandates and who the county sort of contracts with. So because I don't have that resolution memorized, I would just ask that the county check with whoever we're going to go with for technology. Because when I look at their website, it says that they have a vaccine requirement for all of its United States workforce. All new hires must be fully vaccinated before starting at worldwide technology, blah, blah, blah. So I would just ask that we look at seeing if we are going against any of our recent resolutions that this board has passed. That's all, just a request.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So this is what we're looking at as an update for the operating system, not for devices. I think it was brought up about devices for cell phones, laptops, and computers, individuals. This isn't for the hardware tools. This is for the operating system, correct?
No, this is also including hardware. So new phones located on people's desks, along with soft phones. So people working from home or virtually.
So it would be like if I dropped my phone and it had a break in, it covers the phone. You replace the whole phone if a phone breaks.
This is for the phone systems within like the office. So it's not a mobile
That's what
device. It's for our actual infrastructure
Right,
throughout the county.
that's what I was saying. It's the infrastructure. It's the operating system. Yes, phones and devices have bugs, and this operating system and who you have hired will correct the bugs and make things move smoother. However, I heard 911 brought up about we do have a mandate that we have to have an enhanced 911, and I believe that 911 systems our county communications is separate from the rest of the departments. They are an entity unto themselves when it comes to communication. I don't believe that they have our system now. Are you suggesting that we tie in 911 with this system?
No, these are federal regulations mandating that we provide information to 911 during an emergency. For instance, the direct dialing requirement requires that employees don't have to dial a 9 or a 1 before calling out to 911. So these are mandates that we have to configure the system around in order to properly communicate to 911 and dispatch of where people in the
So
emergency.
if I could
place.
help there, if I pick up my phone in my office and dial 911, 911 doesn't know whether I'm on the third floor, second, first floor. This is
Cool.
to really pinpoint. It's that phone over there.
Thank you, because when I see 911, I think of 911 with the whole world, not 911 in the building. So
Yeah.
that's good down to earth communication there, Aaron. Thank you.
And in reference to your other question, the separation hasn't happened quite yet. It's still pending. That 911 agency is still using our equipment.
And
Right
infrastructure.
in transition.
Yeah,
It's going to be
there's
happening
some
in the
gray
next month.
lines of what's theirs and what's ours. And so we're working on the interlocal
Yeah.
agreement too.
Is the update going to happen when they're in their new building? Is that kind of what both parties
That's
are
the goal.
talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and that's when the real enhancement in their own system will be theirs but yet they need to be able to access us for maps and for
Systems have to communicate.
real-time communication
Yep.
as to what road closures, and that would be the road department filling them in on things like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you cleared up some information, appreciate it. And yeah, I was one of the ones that were on Zoom that during the workshop, and I could not. Weber, I hope you enjoyed your trip. It happened when you were gone. Yeah, you. But I was one of the citizens that really truly wanted to comment at a workshop, and the system was down and we could not access Zoom. We could see, and do you have any idea? And that is just torture. It's when you want to have an input and you have something to add to the table and you cannot communicate for the life of you. There was no way of contacting the staff to say, Houston, we have a problem. That might be something to address with this new system.
Thank you.
Just real quick, I want to just echo what my seatmate said back here about the vaccine requirement for this company. And I believe that when we were making this resolution not so long ago, said we weren't going to do business with people that had those requirements. So no matter how great all that is, if that's one of their requirements, if that's all true, maybe we should find a different vendor.
Hi there. Excuse me, I'm not a tech person, so if I come across kind of weird.
They're good
I
questions. Go for it.
apologize. About 10 plus years ago, I still have this friend, but this friend used to work in the assessor's office. And my question was, they got a new program. It took them several years to get the bugs out and to get it efficient. I mean, they had major problems. Now, is your hardware going to be compatible with those programs that they're running? Or do they have to go through another training session? Because it was a terror.
They're totally separate. This is for our phone system. And so like.
Oh, it
think-
is only, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
Harris
excuse me.
Govern and PACS and all that stuff for the assessor's office and treasurer's office won't be touched. This is
Okay.
our communication system and technology.
Okay, it was such a headache. I just didn't want them to go through it again.
Good morning. Did I understand that this is going to have something to do with the Zooms trying to call into these meetings?
No,
Yeah, we need that.
no, I mean, it's not. This is again, just for our phone system. It's not what meeting platform we're interfacing during these public meetings.
Oh, okay.
We are doing some changes with KLTV on how things are going to be streamed. NDI, I believe, is the acronym, but they're looking at leveraging newer technology, higher camera solutions and whatnot. And that's in the final stages. And that's for all municipalities. But again, this is kind of like the assessor's office software. It's two separate systems.
Okay. The next question is on one of your earlier slides, I saw that you were very proud of a difference in cost between now and what it's going to be after whatever you're doing.
Mhm.
Is that, how much of that difference in cost has to do with labor?
So what I did is I took an analysis of the hours and the time. The employee that was implementing the software was working about 80% of her time. So based off of the technology and then the way that the proposal was made and the professional service was in that, I cut everything in half. So I'm saying that deployment's going to be 40% of our employees' time, and then support, rather than 40%, it's going to be 20%. So I still accounted for investment from our staff within that proposal.
Okay, so are you, when this goes through, will you have the same number of employees or less employees?
So currently the system is designed around 690, 700 employees. The part that's amazing about this plan is that it allows us to expand up to 20%, so up to 1,000 employees. So it's sizable for growth over the years. So that was a huge thing that we took into consideration, because our current system, we're out of licenses. So if we hire somebody, we can't give them a phone. There's all these things where we have to start playing this license shuffleboard game.
I do want to point out that we have no plans to increase the workforce by 20%. That's not underway.
Okay, well, the next question is, how do we reduce it by 20%?
Well, I'd like to step in on that one. Every IT situation I've ever been involved with has so much to do that you couldn't hire enough staff to do it all. So what we're doing here is, when a person no longer has to babysit the phone system, there's plenty of other things to do that really should be done. There was a time when we were totally exposed and we couldn't record documents for a couple of days, for example. We must operate more like a banking system, where you don't call up and they say, oh, well, our computers aren't working today, kind of thing. We also have very much pressure on security. And a diagram that I hope you don't bring back up again for here, because it's a bit too much, but we've got different groups that we must keep isolated for the court systems. They must be able to talk to us, but we must understand that there's a lot of security involved with what's going on there. And that takes a lot of effort to do so appropriately.
Okay, yeah, that's understood. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, yes, we do.
Just one simple one. What other public or private entities in the region have this Cisco technology, et cetera, that we're mirroring with or even lean on for help at times?
So Cisco is a worldwide company, and we have them servicing government and non-government entities, so public and private sector, and they're in Washington state already. Cisco is one of the industry leading technology companies. Worldwide technology is also global, and I provided illustrations because I just wanted to kind of address what their financial solvency is. Again, our current provider, the phone system itself, the Avaya, they just declared bankruptcy, whereas like Cisco is a solid company along with Worldwide Technologies. And they're everywhere.
Okay, so in the due diligence, I presume the commissioners or you or someone have talked to other users of this program and technology.
Yes. I believe LCC is also using Cisco. So I mean, just even in our community, it's right next door.
So what I understand here is we had a bunch of bids. And this is the one you want to pursue to try and negotiate a contract with. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay. I'll be real up front with you. If what I hear is correct, and you need to verify with them, if they have a vaccine mandate, I will not vote for that contract. So I just want to be very clear.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I probably need to address the vaccine issue, there, what is it the public would like us to do if every respondent of any proposal has a vaccine mandate on it? Because I believe that's what we face here. It wouldn't make any sense for us to cause you, instead of paying $538,000, for you to pay $685,000 plus increased operating costs there. We have, there is a boundary where I think we should not cross. I don't want to tell Cisco how to live. They don't, and I don't want them to tell us how to live. If they have a product that we can use that serves the purpose, we should go ahead and get that get the product. My mom said something like, you should not cut your nose off to spite your face. And that's really what we're seeing here. That's a different thing than if we are starting out or we're issuing grants and all that kind of stuff. I've spoken here before that I have heartburn over that, but this is a totally different situation.
Well, I would disagree. If you're not willing to stand for stuff, then you're part of the problem. And that kind of stuff is just unacceptable to do to people. And I'm not going to be part of that problem.
I came up to say that.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think we all ought to just pack it up and go home then, because we are all part of building blocks in a system that is wholly unfair in so many ways. So our only choice is to try to tweak the system towards something constructive. And I think by my arguments in the past and my votes in the past, I have evidence that I'm on that page, and I will stand up, and I've taken a lot of heat over that. But not to purchase something because of a vaccine mandate, in my book, is pretty somewhat ridiculous.
All right, we have two folks who've have their hands up. Darcy Billingsley. Darcy?
Hello, I just wanted to echo the idea that we should be considering a company that the companies and entities that we work with do reflect American values. It should be part of the equation of the decision-making process. And we should, at every possible avenue, find companies that are in agreement with our values. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kim Smith?
My concern isn't this, it's for the end of the meeting where I can talk.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm actually in agreement with Mr. Mortensen that we should not be cutting off our nose to spite our face. I guess people like ideological positions and hard lines, but it's not a reasonable way to run our government. We can't tie ourselves in knots and stop doing business just because there's an edge of our ideological beliefs that we're going to take a position against. That's not a good reason to increase the cost to the taxpayers for a contract. It's not a good reason to delay the needed investment in our county's IT infrastructure, our ability to send and receive calls and basic information. I really disagree with trying to apply an ideological lens to basic contracting processes. Certainly you can take into consideration their position, but you're talking about national, international companies. It's really unreasonable to try and make international organizations that have probably hundreds of thousands of employees conform to Cowlitz County's particular ideological stance. That's not a reasonable way to conduct business.
Yeah, if I could add one thing on that, I stopped short, but based on that, we are pretty much ideologically opposed to what goes on in China from human rights standpoint. Yet I don't see anybody refusing to shop at Walmart or buying any number of things that are made in sweatshops or in conditions that we wouldn't normally approve of. There's some practicality that we have to take into consideration. It doesn't mean you forego your principles. We are not asking, any of us here are not asking anybody to take the vaccine or not to take a vaccine. It's your choice, and I will stand by that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you want to talk along ideological lines. What if we're dealing with a company, worldwide company, put that big picture up there, where they have discrimination, where they're like a black person couldn't work at that company, or you know, you're forced to work in slavery to make the product. Now, at what point you go on this ideological thing of, well, we can't do this or that? Well, what ideology are you gonna? Where does the line start or stop? You know, it's like,
Well,
now, I know for a fact if Cisco had a we don't hire black people policy, then these guys would, you know, the counterside here would be howling to high heaven. Don't do business with them. Well, this is, you know, it's like, where are your principles and where do you draw the line? And so I'm against this vaccine thing because we sat here in the hundreds and complained about that. And I remember when the resolution went through, and it's your resolution. I don't remember every word in there, but that was one of the topics. Don't do business with people that require the vaccination. That was one of the things that we talked about. And I don't know if that made it into the resolution, but I know that when I was standing here making my vote was for that.
The
Don't do
language,
business with these
the language in that resolution was very close, very carefully crafted. It was not that we won't do business with people. It would be that we would not fund specifically grant-wise companies or entities that had the mandate. Now, it turned out that was something that the lawyer said you simply cannot do. And so that was stricken out of that, and we ended up with the more or less toothless kind of thing, but at least it expressed the sentiment.
Okay, so I'm just going to go back to it. If they had a racist policy, everybody'd be making a big deal out of it. This is a vaccine policy. Same thing in my book.
I would
do business.
I would go back to George Washington's 1796 farewell address when he says, "Don't pick sides. Just do business like you normally do business, and that way you avoid the entanglements like we currently have in the Ukraine, in which you want to kind of battle Cisco with an issue." If enough said.
I guess I want to touch two things. First of all, what year did Avaya go bankrupt?
They just declared bankruptcy.
Just now, okay. On the issue of the vaccine mandate, I'm sure if it was a company, a worldwide company that was practicing genocide, or if they were a Chinese-based company, we would probably be able to draw lines that would be pretty simple and pretty clear for us to understand. There's going to be policies in companies that we have to deal with that we may agree with and some that we may disagree with. This gives me heartburn to try and figure out where to draw the line on the vaccine mandate. I see that finally our government and the armed services is backing off on all this stuff and overturning previous bad decisions they've had. And if somehow we could influence another company to not mandate the vaccine, I'd sure like to see us be able to do that. But at the same time, would I say that that company has to change their rules or their policies in order for us to do business with them? Again, you're back to, you know, which ideology can you live with and what can you not live with? And I leave that to you gentlemen to figure that out.
Thank you.
So just a thought there is that in all the discussion, what their policy is their policy, but in us signing that agreement, they think that we're endorsing their policy also. Or if they want to make a change in their policy, how do they go back to their customers? I would propose that we simply put a note on this agreement that says, we understand where you're at. We are not enforcers of that. If you change your policy, we accept that, so that they know that we're not endorsing their fax policy.
So just to be sure I understood, you're saying if we go ahead with the contract, just make a note to that effect.
Right, that we are freedom of choice
Is-
county, and
Yeah.
therefore they make a change, if they get wise and wisdom with the freedom of their people, that they have all these contracts that they expect everybody has signed up in agreement with that.
Again, I need to mention that I have tech-wise, I'm
You're
like
fine.
at the bottom. But I have a phone, an iPhone, and I want you to know that right now, my phone thinks I live in Oregon. If I do, a search. And what scares me is that this company is worldwide. If they can hack my phone, the world would have access to our county communications. Is that what I'm hearing?
So because we're going with the on-premise infrastructure, things are going to be behind our firewall. So we're not
Have a
going to have
firewall.
cloud service. It's not going to be outside. So we're going to have protection and, our network
So
team.
you cannot be hacked from another country or entity,
We
correct?
do our due diligence to negate that. And if you have more technical questions, I have two of my network people here.
Okay, well, thank you, because again, I don't have much confidence in, because my phone is so poor. It does all these strange things that when the first words you said, this is a worldwide company, and I kept on thinking, well, then the hacks could be coming from the world.
And they do. I mean, we have geo blocking, so things that try to come from, certain countries, we can block them. But again, we chose to go with an on-premise infrastructure that will be behind our fence.
Okay, I'm going backwards and bear with. You said there was 3 finalists and then we went on with the Cisco presentation. Could you tell me what the other who the other 2 finalists are?
Absolutely. I'm sharing my screen again, so I'll
Oh,
wait to see. if
cool.
it will
Thank
come
you. And
back
the
up.
costs
Mhm.
costs
Yep.
of those others?
I tried to make it just a nice visual. So there were 3 top contenders, and these were the 3. 2 were Avaya-based products, and then the other one was Cisco.
And so that's why you ended up with Cisco's, because the other 2 were Avaya, who had just filed for bankruptcy. Is that what I'm seeing?
That
It's-
and then a lot of the other proposals, I'm sorry to interrupt, were cloud-based infrastructure, such as like Ring Central.
So you picked the middle of the range, but with conservancy of concern of is Converge One and Cerium going to be around after possible restructuring of this Avaya company? Is that kind of the mindset you were going with?
So I'm looking at the product, the backbone of
Okay.
what we'll be using. So Avaya is the product, and they were the ones that just declared bankruptcy. Converge One and Cerium are like license provider. They're allowed to sell and support these services. We currently are using Converge One. Again, kind of making sure that we have control. We wanted to go with a on-premise infrastructure. So I alluded to the cute little cloud next to their Avaya product because theirs was going to be a cloud platform. The concern I had with Cerium is that they wanted to use our current infrastructure, essentially use as much as we can. So my concern with going with their proposal is that, yeah, they may have come in as the lowest bidder. However, they were wanting to use antiquated infrastructure that's failing us.
And that wasn't working for you, the antiquated structure.
Correct.
And you were also looking at Cisco because you have staff that is already trained on their system and that's, you were looking for, were you looking for cost effectiveness?
Yes.
They won't have to be trained on the system, obviously, that we already have. But I think the question was brought up by various people. How many people are already trained on this platform so that we have some can continue on with a smooth transition?
No, that's a good question. We actually included that in our proposal saying that we needed to be involved during the implementation. So there's the knowledge of the product and deployment and infrastructure along with training. So there is actually set funds aside within that proposal that will address our training and our skill sets.
Well, in building our skill set, I wonder how much time is going to have to be pulled away from the office, how many bodies for specific training. You know, like, is there one individual per office that is already trained on this system? So there'd be, you know, like at least one body able to do the job and a half while somebody else is in training, you know, like if it's online training, it can be up to 4 hours a day. Just, I don't know if you can answer that.
So the way that I was forecasting is, you know, I essentially took everything. It took us 80% to deploy our old legacy system. So I whacked it in half.
Okay.
So I'm accounting for about 40% of my staff's time to deploy this and get trained. And so I'm trying to find the work-life balance and the workload. And, you know, this is a county-wide project. So I'm not deploying multiple projects at the same time. So we're trying to hone in.
Okay. So it's basically doing their job with the old system until they're trained with the new system. So that's where you came up with the 40. And they'll still be able to do the job, but do it with one hand behind their back because they're working with the new
Essentially, yes.
system. What we hear a lot in banking about, they've switched to new systems. And I think somebody else has already brought this up, but I have a different way of saying it. Is this transferable in knowledge in the industry, like the banking industry? You said Cisco is already running this, so there shouldn't be a problem. It's akin to like one person working with XP and another one working with Vista. They're two different critters. Windows 8, Windows 7. This is operating systems, and sure, they might be made by Microsoft, but they're all entirely different. Is this platform set up to where it's basically a brick building that will just add a little brick here and there where it doesn't become so confusing and totally learning an update all over again? You know, XP moved files around and it took 4 hours to find them. I was not impressed. Cisco's got enough brains not to do something that ugly to our employees.
I have smart people on my team, and that's something that I feel like they can handle the learning curve. Like I said, I'm trying to be mindful of not overbooking countywide projects. Technology does evolve, and what I'm trying to do is streamline. So we are also buying like Cisco Catalyst cores for our network infrastructure. So I'm trying to get our network and our infrastructure kind of all on the same platform, so we don't have to have knowledge in all these different fields and different brands and companies. So I'm trying to streamline that.
So we shouldn't be looking like Bill the Cat.
What was that?
Shouldn't be looking like Bill the Cat trying to figure out how to operate our computers in.
Exactly.
There should be continuity from one year to the next. If there's an upgrade, it should just blend and meld with the platform you've already been given.
That's our goal, and that's what we're trying to work towards. And again, getting everything towards a Cisco infrastructure.
Thank you for presenting the rest of them, because I was curious what's going on. Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else?
So I've got quite a bit of a difficulty here. I don't think people fully understand the ideological consistency and inconsistencies. We tend to pick on someone that we can bully and push around. So we don't pick on China for their human rights stuff. We pick on Grenada or Panama or something like that. And are we doing the same thing here? Many medications are made in China, as we all know. I doubt any of us would refuse the medication. Oh, no, I'll wait until I get the right manufacturer on this. Cell phones, most of us have a cell phone. You better believe there's Chinese material in here. And I don't see any of us throwing away the cell phone in order to be philosophically consistent with the Chinese who locked down the whole nation and vaccinated everybody and told a bunch of lies. They were really not good people. If you throw it, make sure you throw it in between us. There was a comment about have I voted against any program or any product that had the vaccine mandate. I don't ask that question because I'm a customer right now and I need or want the product. Anyhow, do we have other fiscal material in IT?
Do we have? We do, but it's not necessarily our core infrastructure. We have kind of a mixed bag.
It doesn't matter. That's a yes or no answer.
Yes.
Okay, and we probably have a lot of other equipment that is made elsewhere, and we have not checked to see if their vaccine policy is correct or in keeping with what is being requested. True?
Correct. I don't check that specifically, no.
Yeah. So then a question, this phone system we have, or you want to change it? It's been in the works for 3 years, maybe longer. What's the time horizon? Like if we don't do this today, the world will fall apart by when?
You're spoiling all the fun. That was my next slide. I literally had it up.
Well,
So I can share the timeline to address our infrastructure and when we need to do this. So if we can-
specifically answering my question.
Yes. Hmm?
Okay.
I have it right here. So current support, I got our licensing with our current Avaya Converge One system all the way through August of this year. So the reason why I'm trying to be proactive and get this done within a timely fashion, I'm giving us 5 months to deploy. So March would be the time that we would get our terms finalized. We would start the project April 1st. And then these are kind of just ballpark estimates of when we would have our system infrastructure set up. And then when we would start piloting and then ensuring that everybody is transitioned over by August 28th.
Let me look at it here. I'm trying to watch.
Do you want me to zoom in on a particular portion?
I beg your pardon?
Do you want me to zoom in on any particular portion?
No, I just wasn't, I was paying attention to some of the comments also. So this doesn't really answer my question. So everybody knows that when a company goes defunct, that there are other vendors around that know that there's a large set of customers who will need support. So that's a business opportunity that our capital system typically fills in. So the expectation here is not that on the 28th of August, we will die. Things will change somewhat. And so we can survive with this phone system some amount of time. I just don't know what the assessment is for the failure mode and the failure costs. It's a little bit out of your scope because you had assumed that that was a good timeline on the ground. And so you should proceed and do whatever it is you can to prevent having to answer that question the hard way. Anyhow, I don't see any other hands up.
Go ahead.
Well, my concern was the same one that he voiced a minute ago. Your timeline shows what happens if you go with the new system. If nothing happens, absolutely zero, when does your existing system die?
It has been dying. Last week, we had a failure to where we did not have support. We ended up having to solve the problem ourselves. So it's essentially, in cliched terminology, a ticking time bomb. We don't know when it's going to fail.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's really not a good answer.
No,
It's-
I can't forecast when it's end of life. It's beyond its life.
Right, but the
expectancy.
answer is you were able to fix it. Why would that not be the same next week or the week after?
The
When
thing-
does your licensing run out?
The end of August.
Okay, so your existing license goes through the end of August.
Yep.
So at least at this point, you think you can keep this system alive till the end of August?
That's our goal.
Okay.
And
Do we get an
generally
answer
that
to the
means
question?
that staff can't get to other regular tasks. They've got to set aside other regular tasks to
Mhm.
do the troubleshooting.
Yes, I believe for the instance that happened last week, it took multiple staff, and I know the system was offline for about 6 hours and it was interfering with elections. So there's things where we could not provide service to our customers because of a server failure.
Okay.
You have a gentleman at your table. Does he wish
Oh,
to say something?
wow. Yes.
My name is Lance Holmesworth. I'm the senior network engineer for the county. I'd just like to clarify, I've heard Cisco being thrown around, in this. Sorry. I'd just like to make it known that originally someone came up from the audience saying that there were some vaccine issues with the company. I think it was Worldwide. But then it kind of, got out to be a Cisco, and I just wanted to clarify that it was Worldwide Technology. Cisco is just the product. Cisco is just the switch that's installed for the phone system, and that it's Worldwide Technologies that has the issue with the vaccines.
Any other questions?
You have a hand.
I got one more I gotta ask.
All right.
So the bulk of what I thought we've been talking about telecommunications systems, you just said that the failure of the system interfered with the elections.
It
What
did
is
not,
called?
it did
What
not
is-
interfere, but it was causing an issue to where we couldn't adjust their business hours to where when people called in, typically their business day ends at 5 o'clock and we were extending their hours for the phone system. It didn't interfere. We were able to resolve the issue.
I don't think I'm using my words. I think I'm repeating what you said.
We resolved the issue. It was the phone system to where we couldn't update their business hours. But we were able to resolve it by finding the solution, and we implemented that before.
Okay, so I'm at a
definitely-
loss. Tell me whose business
It
hours? are
didn't
you
have
up
anything to do with
No.
tabulating the ballots that
No.
were the
No,
issue
it was
last
just
week.
interfering with their office hours for their phones.
Whose office hours?
The elections department.
It was the elections department that specifically had a request to extend their hours that evening.
I'm still not understanding why that's got something to do with elections.
I'm just giving an example of where we weren't able to update their hours of operation for the phone system. So typically their business day ends at 5 o'clock. We were extending their hours in the phone system. Just so if
And the
somebody,
general public needed to know that?
I was just giving an example. I'm
So-
confused.
so
You said that the
Steve,
system
okay,
failed and
Steve,
you had to
Steve,
fix it.
I want to be very careful.
Okay.
It's not inquisition time for staff. I mean, I appreciate the
No,
discussion.
I'm not trying to
Okay,
inquisition
so-
anybody. I'm not trying to shoot somebody. I'm just trying to understand what this phone system had to do with elections. That was her words, not mine.
It was an example of
And the
us
phone,
providing.
and the
the
phone
service.
system is connected when people call in and want information from the elections office staff. And they wanted to extend their hours to provide more service. And there was a glitch in the technology being able to extend those hours. That's all. It's nothing to do with the actual vote counting part of elections, more with the administration of the elections offices.
Okay.
Okay.
Words have meaning. Maybe it interfered with the elections information system would have been a better description.
Well, you're not, Steve is not alone in this, because I heard election as well. And I really don't understand how it could matter if somebody called after hours, because when I call after hours, it mean, or at any time. Point given, when I wanted to call Zoom, I tried calling the staff and everything ended up going to voicemail. Apparently voicemail does a lot of business. But anyway, I heard election and I'm a proponent and I have no apologies. I am concerned about integrity, voter integrity. And given a black eye to our auditor over, I'm concerned about her having a black eye with misstatements on election. That's one hurricane red flag. And I'm sorry if you commissioners don't like hearing us coming up here and jumping on that statement, you're going to be hearing it a lot more. We're all over having our vote count matters.
Mr. Chairman, you have a hand up.
Yes, Teresa Purcell.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I want to first thank the staff for their very thorough job in presenting this information. But I also wanted to just flag that the concern that I hear about what it sounds like is kicking the can down the road. It sounds like we have a system that has not been updated, has not been brought up to the latest in technologies, and that we need to make a significant investment to do that. And I am very concerned about the concept of just waiting until the system dies before we actually do make the investment that's necessary. Part of leadership is to actually plan ahead and to have the county in the strongest possible position to meet the needs of the people and to also meet the needs of new industries that are coming into our community, to meet the needs of all, new businesses. We want to be attracting new businesses and new investors. And part of the challenge is that if we are not running and proving that we can handle the business, have the infrastructure, and are making smart investments, then they're going to go to another place. And so I would just strongly encourage this Board of Commissioners to move forward, plan ahead, be aspirational, and bring in the latest technologies to not even, this isn't a Cadillac of any sort. This is just basic services so we can serve the people. So I encourage you to move forward, because as the conversation has taken place, this has been going on for years, and you can't wait for a system to die before you actually replace it, because it all takes time and nothing gets cheaper the longer you wait to make an investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim,
Yes,
are you commenting on this issue?
yes, I
or
am.
Okay.
I
thank
am.
you.
I just wanted to address the people that are concerned about the wording and words have meaning that are inquisitioning her. She said the election was not interfered with, that it was a problem in our current antiquated system that we currently have that was resolved within the system, so it did not affect anything. That's what she said. So I don't know why everybody is pouncing on her, because they're not understanding what she said. We have a current system that is so antiquated that I'm here waiting to listen to all this for something that happened in the last meeting because I couldn't get in on the Zoom call because of our antiquated system. So that's it. I just wanted to address that. Thank you.
I do want to point out to the audience that we do have times, bid openings at 11. So we do have a few more minutes to finish up, but we also have several other items that we haven't talked about. Go ahead.
I will be very quick on this. Thank you.
Mhm.
This is toward Teresa and Kim. I understand your concern about very poor working conditions as far as our communication service, but I need to let you know that our community is applauding the due diligence. I mean, our commissioners are trying to do the best with the money that we have. We are going to, completely replace it. I'm well aware of that, but they want to make sure that it's done correctly and the first time, and that we spend our money wisely. So yes, it has to be done. We understand that. We've understood it for a while, but let them do their job and do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. No hands are up. No one's approaching the podium. I would entertain a motion.
Interesting thing, I am appalled at the price, but then again, I'm cheap and I'm appalled at all the prices. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bid award to Worldwide Technology as has been presented.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone abstain?
Abstain, post.
You're opposed or abstain? Opposed. Okay, I vote yes, and the motion does pass 2-1. Thank you very much. Good discussion.
Yes, thank you for your input.
Next, we have some proposals from Health and Human Services. The first two are related. It is a request for approval of an agreement with the Department of Commerce for a community development block grant program in the category of a public service grant that has in the past gone to Lower Columbia Community Action Program to assist with Meals on Wheels. So that would be agreeing to receive the money from the state. And then that's followed by a request from the department to actually formally award the Meals on Wheels program funding to Lower Columbia Community Action Program. And then we'll talk about the other one after that. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Gina James, Health and Human Services. So items 9 and 10 are related. As Commissioner Weber was explaining, item 9 is our contract with the Department of Commerce to receive this grant. The grant application itself was approved by the board several months ago, and with a public hearing and approval of the grant application at that time. So this is receiving that grant. The grant is in the total of $68,000. Item 10 is the pass-through contract. This particular grant, Community Development Block Grant, Public Services, has to be passed down to local community action agencies. For us locally, that is our Lower Columbia CAP. So item 10 is passing the funds through to Lower Columbia CAP. That particular contract is in the amount of $64,500. The difference is $3,500, and that's what is allowable for us to retain to cover our department cost of administering the grant. This particular grant, as it was approved in the grant application, is to support the Meals on Wheels program, where CAP is delivering, making and delivering meals to low-income seniors across the county. It can only be utilized outside of the city of Longview. The city of Longview receives their own community development block grant funds. So this particular grant is utilized for more rural Cowlitz County, all the way up in Riderwood, down to Woodland and whatnot. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Okay, go ahead.
I am not opposed to this program. It's been running for quite some time. I do have a question about nutrition and what the meals really consist of. You can't feed garbage and junk food to an individual and necessarily call it a meal. And especially if they're low and moderate income, it costs money to eat nutritionally properly. And also a nutritionist can aid in portion serving and such with people that have dietary needs, allergic to certain foods, trying to have a low carb diet, these kinds of things. Who prepares the meals? What do they consist of? Can it be, is there a possibility of having vendors provide meal packets for this Meals on Wheels program that could be at a lower cost and serve more people? These are some of the questions that as a citizen I have to ask. Do you have any answers?
Yeah, so CAP prepares the meals. There is a nutritional assessment that's completed with the individuals when they sign up for the program. And so they will look at what dietary needs they have. Sometimes individuals need to be on a low sodium diet or are diabetic. And so they do have some dietary restrictions or allergies, as you mentioned, that are taken into consideration and followed when preparing those meals for those individuals. So that is a part of the program.
Well, some people have different taste buds than others, and they would be more apt. It's kind of like telling a housewife how to do laundry right in the middle of a volcanic eruption and Cowlitz is running like mud. You know, about how food tastes or looks or actually what is in it. Is there an oversight to kind of find out the truth? Get samples once in a while, some sort of a quality control?
I know that the food has to follow the USDA food guidelines in terms of nutritional components. We're happy to get a sample meal and you know, maybe post on our website to show kind of what's in it and what's included, if that would be helpful to kind of see an example.
I think it'd be helpful to have the commissioners eat one once in a while. Then they'd know what their constituents are getting. But that would be nice on the website. And
I
also-
appreciate your concern for us. I've been told I
I'm
haven't
not
missed
talking
very
about
many
that. Just so you
meals.
can see what it tastes like and looks like, you know.
Yeah.
You know, institutional food isn't too attractive, you know that. Again, they have a choice between two meals when it comes time to deliver, or do you get what you get?
I think you get what you get. I think they try to stick to, I mean, following individual nutritional adjustments, they try to stick to to make, you know, make the prep go more smoothly, try to stick to the meals. But it is an optional program, so individuals can opt in or opt out at any time.
You know, I actually don't understand your question. This is not intended to be a convenience net. It's intended to be a safety net.
Granted, but
So-
also when you're in an assisted living facility, I'm a senior. I'm just looking at the overall scope of, you know, being an old folks home and whatever. You're delivering food to my house. Yeah, I get it. I can take an option or two different options. Isn't that far out of line? I'm trying to help you out here, Commission, because there's always people that complain about food. My concern is, yeah, it's a grant. You're not taking anything out of your budget for a grant for this program. It's a grant. But I'm just looking out for the better interest of those who are in the program and getting the most value from the program to assist in health by having a balance. She answered my question about nutritional needs. That's great. I was looking into the possibility of it going up for bids for Meals is who could provide the most value for the dollar for this program can the program be outsourced so that their monies can go farther? That's,
So we have three people
yeah, okay.
in line. So Angie Ween has her hands up, and then we'll get to Reverend.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Can you confirm you can hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I appreciate the time. I'm actually here as a member of the Lower Columbia CAP Board of Directors. And I would like to just share that this has an incredible impact on people in our community that are not able to get a regular hot meal each day. To the question around nutrition, it's much needed nutrition for these people. They are getting a solid protein, 2 to 3 servings of a vegetable, fruit, a whole grain, and dairy each day. On Fridays, when the volunteers come with the food, they also bring meals for Saturday and Sunday. So they're looking ahead to ensure these people still have the nutrition that's needed. Just this past year, almost 49,000 meals were delivered in Cowlitz and Wahkiakum County. And that included over 3,100 volunteer hours of helping put this food together, people coming and bringing the food. One of the value adds is not just the actual meal that gets delivered itself, but also the interaction that that person might get that they don't have with other people sometimes during the day. Sometimes their family isn't here. They don't have the ability to get out. They aren't able to drive anymore. Physical disabilities might keep them in their home. So this also serves as a wellness check. When they get their food, the person gets to see how they're doing. And if they're not okay or they're not home, there's actually a phone call placed immediately to find out from someone if that person is okay, or they may have fallen and they can't come to the door or whatever. So this is a huge asset to people in our community that need it. And I'm just incredibly grateful to CAP for the work they do, and to the commissioners for continuing to support this vital need for people in our community. So thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Sure.
to interrupt. I've argued against this program in the past any number of times. Some of it has been based on including the reality of $15 a meal. And that's really something. But now I want to up the ante of my position against this. You were on a trip to Washington, D.C., isn't that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And the public is going to get to see all your expense reports, right?
It will be.
And they know how much you get paid. Okay, I've been asking for us to get the names of the recipients of the government largesse, and I hit a block wall every time. And I have the position that I will not authorize anything that does not provide us full visibility into the recipients. This is high time we did that. The first time I objected to this program, I got lambasted pretty hard, and it turned out that one of the people who was very upset posted something on Facebook and said, if it hadn't been for this program, my mother would not have eaten. And it turns out this was from a fellow who was fairly well off, I learned afterwards. We are not here to replace the family. In fact, we've caused more damage than ever by replacing the family. So I'm strongly opposed to this program.
Commissioner Dahl, were you going to make a comment?
My understanding, everything's prepared in Longview, so the people in Riderwood get frozen meals, right? Do they still charge or still ask for a $4 delivery fee?
I'm not aware of a delivery fee connected with this.
Yeah, I've heard that pretty
It's a
common.
donation that they're asking.
It's voluntary.
Yeah, it's voluntary. This is I've seen a picture of the meals. I had a person that delivers them, and send me a picture just so I could see them. I'm here to tell you, and let's just talk Riderwood. There's a little cafe in Vader that would prepare whatever, maybe 5 people for our Riderwood. And people out there would deliver that in a heartbeat. And I guarantee it'd be less than $15 a meal, and it would be hot, and it would be per the standards they want. And it'd be a lot more efficient. And just you get these things and they're so inefficient, it just drives me crazy. It's not my job to take it out of these people's pockets and give to them. This is a family thing. This is a church thing. This is a community thing. So I just, I've seen pictures of the meal. I know they get frozen stuff. So the nutrition and the value of it, I get a frozen chicken drumstick in the deal. That's just nuts. If you're going to take care of these seniors, we need to do a hell of a lot better than what I'm seeing.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to encourage the commissioners to vote in favor of these 2 motions to support Lower Columbia CAP for the Meals on Wheels program. I work in several areas in the community with vulnerable elders, particularly low-income elders. And I've heard wonderful things about this program. I've spoken to elders who've made use of the program to hear about the quality of the meals, which is very high. And I also wanted to speak to my church tries to support people with needs when they come to our church. And we've seen a huge increase in those things since the pandemic. And I feel that this is a really common sense way that we can address a crucial need for nutrition for probably one of our most vulnerable communities here in Cowlitz County. And so I would really encourage you to vote yes to support this program that has a long legacy of being successful in the community. And particularly, I appreciated Angie's comment about addressing isolation because there have been a lot of studies done about how isolation in particular impacts older adults and their health outcomes. And so anything that we can do to have these meals delivered and create that social contact that happens. I can tell you as someone who works with a lot of elders that makes a huge difference in overall experience of health for those elders. So I would encourage you to vote yes to both motions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a hand up, Diane Cooper.
Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak on this. I too am on the CAP board. I also, for a period of time, was a Meals on Wheels volunteer. And to Arn's point that the names of the individuals using this service should be made public, I do think that confidentiality laws apply to that and would probably prohibit that. However, I can tell you that I never delivered a meal to a McMansion. I never delivered a meal to someone that didn't have to struggle to get to the door. In fact, some of the folks I delivered to couldn't get to the door, and I delivered to them in their homes. I personally consider myself to be a foodie. And I have to tell you that some of the meals I wouldn't eat, but most of them I would. The folks that I met when I was volunteering for this program were not folks that could get up and get out of their houses and go to the grocery store for themselves easily. And as I'm getting older and don't have family around, and have had some health issues myself, I've depended on the kindness of my friends and strangers. And this program, where the meals are prepared locally and delivered by volunteers, is much needed. And fact of the matter is that Community Action's the only organization in our community that is qualified to and able to receive these funds. So if commissioners, you choose to vote against these grants, you will be denying vulnerable seniors in our community support that they need. And that will be on your conscience. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Hello. I think the point about the funding is important. Ms. James, you mentioned that CAP is the only entity that Department of Commerce can allocate these funds to, is that correct? So these are fundings that are allocated by the state for this particular purpose, and there's nothing else that these funds can go to. So I appreciate the interest in trying to make the program the best it can be and thinking of, you know, alternative ways that community can help seniors in our community. I think those are all great discussions. But the reality of this particular funding is it's a piece of our community safety net. It is a part of CAP's Meals on Wheels program budget, and the commissioners are not responsible for CAP's programs. You're simply a pass-through in this case, where the state, which you're obligated by your oath of office to follow the laws of the state has allocated these dollars through the Department of Commerce. And the Department of Commerce, for these funds, they have to go to local CAP agencies. So whether you like the meals that CAPs provide or think that the community could do a better job of providing these resources on their own, the community cannot do a better job with these particular fundings. Only CAP can use these fundings to provide a well-established program that is important to people in our community. I think it is irresponsible to say that you are going to stand in between the state's decisions and our community's social safety net. If you stop this funding, you are cutting another hole in our community's safety net. And I think that that is irresponsible. I do not think that's what you are elected to do. You may be here to like try and change things, that's fine, but you need to do so within the confines of the law, and you need to uphold your oath of office. And these funds are for CAP agencies, and this program is needed in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Oh, just a second. It is 11 o'clock. I want to double check with clerk. Can we continue with this debate, or do we need to listen to the bids coming in?
You can continue with the debate.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
So I'm curious about this process of the grant process. Now, did somebody on our team go out and write a grant proposal, or a, what do they call that, a grant writer person? You know, did we apply for these grants?
So the process is the state gets these community development block grant funds from the federal government. There are some local governments that have their own entitlement because of their size. So you might have heard her mention that Longview gets their version of these community development block grant funds. But Cowlitz County and outside of Longview qualifies for what the state gets from the federal government. So the state initiates requests for proposals, and it's for the public service portion. Now, community development block grant funds can be used for a number of different other activities. Public services includes things like Meals on Wheels. And so we responded, and we agreed to make the application. I think that was November, October, something like that.
We've had some significant delays. It's been some time ago. So it was actually April of 2022.
Okay.
Right. So there was a public hearing where the board considered the grant application from Lower Columbia CAP, and it was approved at that time to submit up to the state, and then the state approved the grant application.
So needless to say, the makeup of the commission was different.
That's correct.
So you have CAP wrote the grant request. Is that, I might be wrong on the terms, but they're the ones who developed the grant request. Is that right?
It's correct, because this particular public services grant is to be passed through to community action agencies. And so we worked with our only local community action agency is Lower Columbia CAP. And so, so that we worked together with them on the grant application that the board approved at that time to submit to the state.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that. HHS is the one that applied for the grant
From the state.
from the state. So it wasn't CAP. CAP couldn't unilaterally go do that, at least not
So,
that I
so
understand.
CAP applies to us to get the grant that they're entitled to from the state.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out this process, because we've got to question every grant. So I'm just trying to figure out, so you wrote the grant request and then you sent it to the state? Is that how it works?
It has to be submitted by the county, yes,
So you wrote the grant request, is that right? Your department?
with Lower Columbia
We,
CAP.
we authorized her to write the grant.
With CAP?
With
So you guys
CAP.
sat down, little table?
Correct, and
Give
then
us
we
something.
brought that to the Board of County Commissioners. There was a public hearing on that grant application,
I think
and
I
it was
remember that.
approved at that time to submit.
So you
to
guys
the state.
review it
Yes,
and then send it on up, okay?
yes.
All right, all right. I'm just trying to get that process, a grant process down there. And so
It actually was a fairly gross review in the sense that the question was, there's CDBG dollars available. We could spend them on item A, item B, item C, and the decision of the board at that time was to, I think we were going to split the amount, but I don't know whatever happened. This sounds like the whole amount has gone to Meals on Wheels, or is there a part that we haven't expressed yet?
There's a small part, we had some discussion about exploring the option of prescription drop off as part of this public service as well. So it's not called out specifically because it's considered a public service activity, but that was part of the grant application as well.
Okay.
okay, so the thing about it, some of this, and this is going into my own thing, is that the CAP program, the CAP organization.
Actually,
Now-
you can look at us because you're supposed to be asking us the question.
Oh, I'm so used to talking to Gina in
Yeah, I
the
know.
hallway. And I'm not even picking on her today. So, now where was I? Oh, yeah, the CAP organization. I looked this CAP up one time, sometime back. And now they're like some kind of nonprofit, but what is their exact title in that? Is it an NGO or is it what's their exact title? I forgot what that is.
I think legally it's a not-for-profit corporation. Yeah,
So an NGO then?
three type.
501(c), yeah, because I looked up CAP, I looked up the hierarchy of it, and it seems like all these guys live in the Bay Area in California. And all the guys that are getting the money, because as I understand it,
You got the wrong
Yeah.
organization down.
as I understand it, the CAP takes 10% off the top for administration. Is that right?
Not necessarily. It varies.
It varies, so
Yeah,
it could be
varies
like,
on the
so
type
it
of
could be
program.
20%?
It varies on the type of the program.
Okay, so it could be
Yeah.
50%.
Long ago, we had the CFO of our CAP speak to us, and I was totally not understanding his comments. They just didn't make any sense, but he was addressing that question you have. So if you can get a decent answer to your question, I'll be impressed.
Okay, good, because it seemed.
Actually, I'm not sure which CEO you were talking about because the CEOs.
I said
for our CAP.
CFO.
Thanks. Yes.
Well, I'd like to address the issue that the gentleman talked about. It's the law. If it's the law, and why would you guys be voting on it?
Because the law says we have to.
Okay, so you have the right to deny the funds. Is that correct? By the law, you have the right to deny the funds.
We've been told that we can say yay or nay.
Okay, so that's the law. All right. I would like to make a comment about Meals on Wheels. I took care of my mother extensively, who was living, I put her in an apartment, I had to take her out of her house and put her in an apartment. She had dementia. And CAP was delivering Meals on Wheels to her on a routine basis, which I tried several times to address it with the ladies who delivered them at the door that she didn't need it. She had a freezer full of frozen Meals on Wheels deliveries, and I was taking care of my mom and feeding her at least 2 meals a day. And as far as her not being able to get to the door, because of accidents that the car that I had bought and my mother was using after a couple of accidents that were her problem, I took the car away from her. And she was so pissed at me that she marched all over town to numerous businesses bitching about what kind of a son I was because I took her car away. She was more than capable of getting to the door, and Meals on Wheels was delivering meals to her every day. So I'm not trying to say good or bad, but there are the flip side of stories that, everybody wants to say, oh, the poor seniors. Yeah, my mom fell into that category, but she also had a lot of help and didn't necessarily need Meals on Wheels. So there are people on the other side of this story. They're not all invalids. They're not all people who can't get to the door to get a meal. The flip side of that is I think that the political issue of this, it would be really a black eye on you guys not to grant this, just because of the emotional stature of the whole thing. I've got really mixed emotions about it, but on the emotional side, on a general public view, it is a grant, and Meals on Wheels does provide a good service for a lot of people. Not necessarily all of them are deserving of it, but it does provide a good service for a lot of people.
Just out of curiosity, the public may not know that there's an area Agency on Aging and Disabilities of Southwest Washington, and they have a $30 million a year annual budget, and that comes all from taxpayers. And one of their line items is about $60,000 to $70,000 to Cowlitz County for Meals on Wheels also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just,
I do have 2 people with hands up. Teresa Purcell, you're next. Oh, wait a minute. Teresa, just a second. Commissioner.
well, I'm looking through this, and just so people know, we're talking about 100 persons. That's what's in the contract here. Benefit approximately 100 persons.
Also, did you ask about the vaccine regulations at CAP?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Weber. Council. This is a grant, as you know. Audience should know this is a grant. This isn't coming out of the county coffers. I'm under the impression, and since it is a community block grant funds, and it has already been allocated by past administration, and this is the finalization of it. Most of our questions have been addressed and answered. 100 people. That's good to know that there's that many people. In the future, it'd be nice to have a little bit more information so that we're not standing up here eating up time. I'm delighted to know that there is nutrition. It is addressed. This is a need. It's a grant. And I feel that it should the commission, it would be a black eye upon you not to pass this. This has been an ongoing program. You did your due diligence. You did vet. You addressed our concerns, move forward, and go ahead and pass the grant, please.
Thank you. Next, Vicky Eckert.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Because of what she just said, I also agree. It was voted on back in April. It was approved. There's good and bad in all programs. And at this point, I say pass it.
Thank you. Go
Hey,
ahead.
so something I didn't notice
So-
on here.
So a question on that, we've all ignored pretty much that is, if nothing else, it's $15 a meal. Doesn't anybody get concerned over that? How in heaven's name can a $2 meal end up costing $15? So that
Must
should
be
bother me.
prevailing wage for the guys making them, right?
They're supposedly volunteers.
Oh. What I was curious about was I didn't see an amounts in here. Like it says these grants, but what's the dollar amount on that? I don't have it on my paper, do I? I mean,
Well,
I think she mentioned it. What was it?
The state contract is for $68,000 and the pass-through contract with CAP is for $64,500.
so we're doing 100 people, that's like $150 million. So divided by 100 is $1.5 million each. Okay, got it.
well, if you're asking numbers, you need to, the total funding for the program, because what we're talking about is the state stuff, and then there's leveraged other funding. So the total funding for the program is $236,000 for 100 people. And I get it's grants, but explain to me where grants come from. How do you build a grant?
Still our money.
At some point in time, it comes out of somebody's wallet, doesn't it?
Well, that number might be a little bit skewed. My understanding is there's more in that in the whole program. This is just for the Cowlitz
Yes.
County portion, the 100. And then I think there's, and I can't remember, the numbers always seems to me to be pretty low, but it was like 290 when you add City of Longview. Yeah. So it's not, I mean, those figures are for the whole program. It's Teresa, you're next.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to lift up again, and I agree with a couple of the previous speakers that it would be such a tremendous black eye on this commission and on our county to not fund this program. If you're looking at the chat and if you're looking in the conversations with folks in the community, the fact that our county commission is actually talking about wanting to make public who is receiving this these services and the wellness check. I want to thank Angie Ween for her service on the CAP board and Diane. And I also just want to say that, you know, $15 a meal, if going to the grocery store these days, is the food is getting very expensive. Getting it delivered, all of the pieces are important to keep that in mind. And the fact that we're talking about not funding a program that has been proven again and again and again to contribute to the health and well-being of seniors in our community. In a perfect world, people would live in villages where families are taking care of each other and they have the resources and the ability to do that. That's not where we are right now in our society. And too many people are left in isolation and too many people are left food insecure. And this program is incredibly important to seniors in our community. And I urge you to support this federal grant. Again, does not take money out of the pockets of people in Cowlitz County. This is just money that's going to go somewhere else if we don't vote to keep it here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kim Smith. Go ahead, Kim.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on what Teresa just said on the $15, the concern for Mr. Mortensen and the $15 per meal. I see you guys are seniors as well, and I hope to God you never have to use this service. But obviously you haven't been grocery shopping for a while because that's a pretty fair price. It's delivered to people who are in desperate need. It's nutritionally based by the USDA, just like your schools are. So if it's good enough for our kids, it should be good enough for our seniors. So I don't understand this big concern on Meals on Wheels feeding our elderly. You're in that position, probably don't have to use it because you have the income not to. But this whole time, this is a waste of time. We need to feed our hungry and our elderly. They've earned that. And if they can't afford it, or they're in a situation like so many people in America are, that don't have the money to do so, why are we discussing hunger in Cowlitz County when it's no money out of Cowlitz County's pocket? This is a waste of resources and time. Thank you.
So a couple of comments that were just made, and I'd like to address a little bit of that is, you know, what we're questioning out here is what are we getting for our money? You know, and when you add up the numbers, can we do a better job? And I think as a group, we're kind of like interested in these numbers parts of it. And when somebody makes a statement, and I've heard it expressed several times over the years, is, well, if we don't take the money and spend it, then somebody else will get it. Well, you know, I mean, in a way that would make me feel kind of proud that we grew up and acted like adults, spent our money wisely, and we could, and if somebody else needs it more somewhere else, then they can go in for it. You know, personally, I'm not against this Meals on Wheels thing. Always think things could be done better, but I think that, you know, being able to question, you know, how much are we spending and what are we getting for our money should always be at the top of the list. But again, this is just kind of another spot where government has wandered out of its lane. It's not really government's job to do this. However, we find ourselves in a long-term contract, you know, long-term of doing it, and people come to depend on it. I've known people that got Meals on Wheels. They'd end up with a freezer full of these frozen foods. And, you know, I ate some too. What can I say? They, you know, they're getting old. They gave them to me. I was like eating it. After eating sea rations in a hole in the army, you know what I mean, in the ground, the Meals on Wheels aren't too bad, really. They're fairly tasty.
Yeah, one thing that I find not terribly useful are the testimonials, of which we've heard aplenty. I just put down just a couple of quotations. Incredibly important. That's a meaningless statement. Desperate need, that's a meaningless statement. We don't know any of these things. So the moment I hear those things, I know that the people aren't particularly, the people speaking those terms aren't particularly interested in the truth. And if this were the case, if the truth were to be advertised by CAP and explained in detail, they would have been here anyhow. And like I said, the CFO appeared before. It was a totally useless appearance. My point being is, despite what people think is evidence that this is a useful program, they haven't made the case. And I hope the speaker at the podium here isn't going to talk again in these wide swaths about the grandeur.
Could I
of the
make my
program.
comments before you characterize them, please?
I didn't characterize them. I said, I hope that you would not. That is not a characterization. I measure my words fairly carefully, as you know.
You're implying I was going to make such a statement.
I wasn't implying anything. If you were inferring that, that's on you.
Okay. What I actually wanted to comment about was the idea that our county should have sort of some condition that we need to learn the identity of the individuals receiving any type of assistance dollars. I think that is an incredibly harmful and dangerous idea. And yes, I'm using broad statements there because that's, I think it's really inappropriate, and you invite everyday citizens that may be in a time of need and may be taking advantage of services that elected officials have authorized and funded. If you start saying that every person needs to be subject to every person else trying to police them on their own. I know that there was a previous discussion by this council when you chose not to accept the funding for the emergency dollars to fix the woman's walkway. After that debacle, there was a citizen that went and did all sorts of research on that individual, like following her on Facebook and, trying essentially to question the character of this individual and say that you were right not to award the funds to her. That sounds like what you're trying to accomplish with this idea that you want to have anyone that ever gets Meals on Wheels, they should be on some sort of registry that the county will make available, and then people can go out and hound those people and try and determine for themselves whether they were deserving or not of that assistance. I think that is really dangerous, and I would encourage the county not to adopt any sort of criteria like that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
You did use nonsense words like hounding and stalking. These programs are intended to be a safety net, not a convenience net. Let me assure you, people, when they're hungry, they will not balk about their name being taken down or something like that. This is probably what, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, I don't know when, it was looked upon as taking welfare, was looked upon as not the best of things to do. Now it falls into, it's expected that you will take care of me. Well, let me put in my order for a penthouse in Seattle, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, as usual, I think we talked about this last time Meals on Wheels came up. Is there a way to monitor the system just to assure citizens that are paying taxes that it's well run and that it isn't feeding people like Steve's mom, who was probably very nice and loved having the company, but didn't really need the food and it could have been used for other people. So I didn't hear last time anything about there is kind of a monitoring system, and I'm still curious. I'm not trying to look at you, Gina. I'm wondering about that in general, just monitoring.
I am sure that the folks at CAP would be willing to go over, share. They'd probably even solicit you as a volunteer driver, but I don't know about that.
So my only concern is we the board approved this back in April. So my concern is that would be the time for everyone to speak and get those understanding. And I know the board was different then, but it was approved then. So I feel like you guys should just give the money and move on. And then the next time they come back, then have those questions ready and prepared for them. Thank you.
Do you know how long this has been going on? Correct.
Anyone else? See any hands raised? Do we have a motion?
Did you want to make the motion?
Yeah. I'll do 9 and 10 together. We good with that?
Yep.
We'll make a motion to approve contract 23-011. Washington State Department of Commerce for Community Block Grant to Lower Columbia Community Action Program, and item 10, contract 23-012, approval with Lower Columbia Community Action Program as result of the county receiving funding from the Department of Commerce. Item 1 is 68, or item 9 is 68,000. Item 10 is 64,500 is what gets dispersed out.
All right, thank you. I've heard the motion. Are there any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
I'll explain this, and you'll probably be surprised by the vote. I think the program is very inefficient. I think it'd be done much better. I've talked to restaurants that would cook these things up in a heartbeat, and you get people to get them out there. I still think you could use local restaurants, but you're tied in you're forced to use. I heard the comment, well, CAP is the only place that can do this. Well, of course it is, because it's the only place they allow us to give money. It's not the only people that would do this. And so I think you need to help your seniors, but that's a personal thing, and that's a community thing. And we can do, if you're gonna do things for people, you need to do it a hell of a lot better than what this program does. But I do agree, I'm a person that tends to, even if I disagree with the agreement, the contract, whatever you want to call it, that was made, I tend to abide by those. And, but I can assure you, we strongly looked at the next time it comes up. So with those reasons, I would vote in favor.
You did not ask about the vaccine status.
So, we have one vote in favor. Those opposed?
Opposed.
I also vote in favor. That motion does pass 2-1. Thank you. The next item, number 11, is an agreement amendment for a program with the Department of Ecology to provide for investigating solid waste complaints in education, as well as providing a program for outreach to prevent solid waste violations. This would go through the end of June for this year and pay bills from last June or July. Go ahead.
Thank you. I know this is the third time we've brought this onto the agenda. There's been some discussion about what this grant could be used for. So this, and I'll kind of pause and just to remind everyone, what's on the agenda is an amendment to this grant with the Department of Ecology, removing some of the funds that we don't anticipate to be utilized. This particular grant is for following up on solid waste in complaints, investigating those complaints and closing them out or issuing citations based on what's found through those investigations.
And the agency that gets this is the Environmental Health Unit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. I know we've had some issues recently with a recycling drop-off center, and there's been some conversation about, what we could do. I had mentioned last week that it may be helpful to schedule a work session, and I've be working with Mike Moss to kind of bring the right people to the table so we can flesh out with the board what you may want to do, what we could look at doing so we can keep those recycling centers open for the public and try to prevent any of that illegal dumping in this issue that we've most recently had. With this particular contract, we're fairly limited in our scope, but there may be some other options that we can look at exploring at a work session. So we are looking at dates for that and would love to kind of flush some of that out and look at our different options with the different people and sections of the county that may be involved in that. That being said, we would like to be able to close out 2022 and kind of get this wrapped up so we can wrap things up with our expenses for 2022 and get the calendar year closed out. But as I mentioned, I've reached out to Mike Moss, and we're going to be looking at some dates to get everyone at the table to kind of further explore what our options might be and how the board might want to address some of those issues.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So based on our previous discussions, you were not able to find out, or you did not get a positive answer that we could use this for hiring detectives or things of that nature, and so we must return the money.
Correct. It is, the Department of Ecology has said we're not able to expand on our current scope of work. And with there only being about 4 months left of this particular contract, I anticipate there may be another grant cycle opening up, in which case we could explore expanding the scope of work for this particular grant moving forward past the current grant cycle. But for this particular, the window to adjust our scope of work has closed, and so we are limited in that sense.
Any other questions?
So through the new grant cycle, you can adjust the scope of work stuff a little bit? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we maybe, and we'll have this workshop
Mhm.
to
And
explore what we might do with that.
yes, yep. And there may be some other options out there as well.
The security side is what I'm interested in. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? I don't see any hands raised. I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve agreement amendment number 21-050. Approval with the Washington Department of Ecology to provide funding for investigating solid waste. This amendment decreases the contract award in anticipation of unspent funds and ends June 30th, 2023.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 I also vote aye. That motion carries 3-0. The last item on our agenda before the bid openings is a tabled item from the Office of Public Defense. Are we pulling that off for consideration today?
No, that came up at a workshop because he had was supposed to have it back and we, quite frankly, missed the ball and didn't get the date in for him to receive that. So we sent a request out to him. From what I understand, the request is made where he was in the contract, and he came back and said he's getting it amended. It's been a time issue on his side. So we will see it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Kim Smith had asked to speak. I want to make sure she has an opportunity because we're at that point for citizen comments. If you're still listening, Chris. All right.
Sorry about that. So, this is related to a meeting that I have concerns about. You have recorded meetings that's part of your open, wonderful being open public information. You record your workshops, you record your meetings, and I thank you for that. And as Weber, you know, I have participated in workshops. You need to have citizen input. I have concerns about, I don't believe you were even around on February 15th, sir, were you? You weren't at the February 15th meeting for, well, of course you weren't. This has to do with Cowlitz County planning workshop.
Right.
On February 15th.
February 15th, I got back to Portland
Yeah,
about
okay.
10:15.
Well, that's a different meeting in itself. Yeah, you get to review all of this and work with workshops with your citizens committees. I looked at it and I have timestamps to help you out so that you can go back and look at it. I hope that's helpful. And at the end of my presentation here, I will provide it to the staff. If the rest of the council wants to see what my concerns are about. Yeah, I reviewed the February 15th, 2023 meeting, and I have concerns that came up during that meeting. Timestamp 2 hours, 16 minutes. Adam Trumbull came to the staff seat. Progressing forth, stating that during, it was item number 7, and it had to do with public notices and Providence. It progressed into signage for future development that apparently was at a previous workshop. Adam went in and had repeated himself at this timestamp 2 hours and 16 minutes. He had repeated himself several times that this was him speaking freely between him and the planning commission and himself over and over again. my concern about that was this supposed to be a private conversation and not actually participating in a workshop? All right. Next, Adam Trumbull at 2 hours, 16 minutes, 45 seconds. Let's progress to this new idea, which is the advance notice of application. So this is my take on it. I did hear the strong preference for an early public notice. I would like to remind you there, and I know this isn't proper English, is a state law requiring this. It's a state law that no more than one open record hearing should be held on project proposals. I have an example here from Clark County Planning Commission website. It explains to the public how this goes. And I will read what it says to you. How to participate in County Planning Commission meeting. The commission holds two types of meetings, the work sessions and the hearings. The work session is an informational session for the commission members to be briefed by staff in preparation for the hearing. However, there is no opportunity for the public to have public comment. That is reserved for the hearing. For the hearing, public testimony as well as welcome, and if submitted, to be included into the hearing record. You may submit advance written or email testimony to the Planning Commission staff no later than 24 hours prior to the time of the hearing. I really commend your Planning Commission. You have awesome men on that board. They informed him that that would be Clark County Planning Commission policy and not state law. This is what your chair had to tell him. And our Planning Commission chair was very good about pointing that out and further on in this discussion. At 2 minutes, 18 minutes, 17 seconds, Adam Trumbull. So we can do that. We can have our planning department put that into code. We can mail out advance notice that the application has been received, it's under review, and here is the review process. And importantly, comments will be received. You can email a planner. Really at any time. And that becomes a public comment. I said that slowly because I will interject later. Why? That gets packaged up. We can read them at your public hearing. We can go through them at the public hearing. However you want to deal with this to make sure that it's really part of the record. Well, in that statement, he's gone on to say, how about a closed email and a letter is public comment, and it's not. What I'm doing right here is public comment. The other, somebody would have to know where to look and ask for a FOIA request, and that would take up much more staff time. And it's really kind of it's not the way that this, as it's been pointed out by your commission chair, it's not the way that Cowlitz County has done business for at least the last 8 years that he's been involved in it. So I commend him so much for that, and you two gentlemen. The way that he kept interjecting there at the end, it's kind of like he doesn't want his butt on the line, but he's kind of putting the commissioners' necks out because it's their responsibility to make sure that it's a public comment, not staff. The commissioner, this is another sidebar. This isn't in my notes, but the commissioner made another statement to the fact of an RCW of how their work scope is involved, and it does have public comment, and they intend to keep it that way. And as far as staff goes, they work in conjunction, they work together, and as a matter of fact, the staff works for them. They don't work for the staff. So God bless those guys, the commission, and you as well. Okay, 2 hours, 19 minutes, 18 seconds, Adam Trimble. He interjected to the chair. He said, not policy, it is state law. It's here cited in the memo. I don't know if the memo linked to this. And here's your RCW. I included in the notes that he had to say. RCW 36.70B.050. And then he went out, he didn't read it. He had put it up on the screen so that I saw it in the audience at home. Adam went on to say, it is frustrating. You're trying to comment on them, other people trying to comment on them, and confusion to you to get things done during a meeting. So one way around this frustration is to be clear with the public that there will be a public hearing. We will accept written comments all the way through until that public hearing. My problem with too is submitting things and emails. Emails get lost, as does paperwork. That's why we're here to speak in public at a public hearing. All right, that ends that segue, meeting, notes, timestamps. So at all of that, him not, his attitude and the way that he conducted himself and the subject matter that he brought up, I wondered, who is this Adam Trimble? He has been a Cowlitz County planner for 4 months. Before that, he worked as the Longview City planner for 14 years. He lives in Longview. Since he is so opposed to public comment from the county citizens, see Constitution First Amendment, can he recuse himself as a conflict of interest when an issue comes up related to Longview? Furthermore, AWC. Be sure you gentlemen know what that is, but this is for the audience, for the citizens who do not know. That would be the Association of Washington Cities. It is an underwriter and a legal team for cities. They have classes on fundamentals of the differences are between policy and law. After 14 years with Longview, did he not receive this training? And if not through AWC, there are other underwriters and legal teams that can teach him the same. That's a valid concern. He should know what law is and policy. So that's what I have, and that's when we can present to you. Excuse the typos, typing late at night.
I have to say, I actually had a couple constituents send me that video because they were concerned about the limit that was trying to be placed on public comments, which surprised me because we've been pretty open as a commission that we welcome public comments, that we try real hard not to put any limits on. So I was surprised to see that we had, and I'll have to ask what drove that or why that came about. I think as a county, we've been pretty transparent that we believe you have a right to speak with us. So, I appreciate that brought forward.
And I appreciate you, all three of you, very much. And again, you have got an excellent panel there that allows, they kept in, all three gentlemen that were there and commented on this said that they wanted public input, that people can bring things. It's not just a great match on Facebook or social media, that it actually, people can come forth with constructive criticism or another idea from outside the box, and it works. Everything works smoother to get all of the, let's just say as a body, you have to agree to disagree. And in the end, you come up with a better product. And your men had inferred that to the staff. The problem is with this one staff member, he needs, again, after 14 years, you would think that he would have had some training on the, and education too, as far as that goes, as to what a policy is versus a state law. Oh God, we have enough of those, don't we, sirs? So it goes so far as to how, you know, an agenda as to how you conduct your meeting. Yeah. We don't let you, apparently the last few times, I'm sorry, Weber, we haven't let you okay to the consent to the way you're going to handle the meeting. We go off on a tangent on the line items. We as citizens need to know how to pull our reins back. But when you've got 4 of them that are on the same subject, it's kind of, I understand your pain. And thank you for working with us. But anytime a staff members do not want us to communicate, that's kind of a red flag in my book. I kind of would like you to be aware of that. And we haven't had that problem with the auditor, sheriff's department, or anybody else. When we're at a commissioner's meeting, we can pull them up and we can talk to them. So at a workshop with planning, it should be pretty much similar.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no hands raised, nobody approaching, I think we have completed our work for today. This meeting is.
Kim has raised her hand.
Oh, Kim is back with us. Great. Hi, Kim.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to address my concerns regarding the Silver Lake Village subdivision, numbers 2 and 3, up here off on Hall Road off Spirit Lake Memorial Highway. I understand that it was passed by you folks, you commissioners, last Wednesday for the
Actually,
builder.
that would have been the planning commission. That was in the article in the paper this morning, I believe.
Okay, I didn't read the paper this morning. I'm going from an article that was previously done in any effect.
So,
My concern.
So we use the term commissioners for the planning commission. So sometimes that's confusing. They make
Okay.
those kinds of decisions.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. My concern is regarding the wildlife buffer and the impact on that, and also the traffic as far as, at the end of the article, it said that new traffic created by the subdivision phases 2 and 3 will not significantly affect any intersections according to the traffic study. I'm concerned with who did the traffic study, where is it? The residents haven't seen any of it, and that's not a true fact. It definitely will significantly impact the intersections to Silver Lake Memorial Highway. I live off George Taylor, right across from Silver Lake, and I cannot tell you how many times I've almost been hit and there's been major accidents there for us going 55 miles an hour trying to turn off an intersection to our homes up George Taylor, and the cars behind, because it's 55 and they don't want to slow down, pass on both sides. And you know as well as I do, or if you don't, you should, that there are people fishing, kids, families, children, on that lake right on the edge of the highway there. And I've seen them have to jump out of the way. I have to drive to Hall Road to turn so I can safely come back and go into George Taylor. So I don't almost have an accident or almost get killed or have my hazard lights on. So this is very concerning to me, because the first subdivision that was effectively approved and has been built, because the second one has been approved but has not been built, which is also going to have 16 more houses. And then the third one, 26 houses. We're talking about 250 to 300 more cars here, folks, and people. How can it not significantly impact our traffic? I just want to know that, and who came up with that, and I want to see the traffic study, and our community needs to see the traffic study. You know as well as I do that their permits, just from the permits alone, you know the activity and how wildly this area is growing. Not even counting in 2 years, they've already secured a grant up at Coldwater to put in campgrounds and vacation spots for people. You're going to bring more and more and more people, and then you're saying it doesn't impact any of the intersections off Spirit Lake Highway. I can tell you that most citizens in this area know how much it impacts this area because there's an accident. Look in our records. There's an accident up here almost daily. Deer being killed, all the wildlife from the wetlands, the geese, the deer, which is protected, mind you. And you guys have let that builder take the buffer zone for the yards from 10 feet to 5 feet, just increasing more and more impact on the wildlife that is supposed to be protected. So I'm opposed to this, and I would just like to hear comment on that and maybe get a copy of the traffic report and see how this isn't significantly impacting our area on the intersections or anything else. How many deaths have been up here? There's been deaths I know of, and 4 or 5 cars a year go into the lake. So where the information is coming from, I have no idea, but it's not accurate. Thank you for your time.
So Kim, I don't have answers for all of your questions, but again, keep in mind that Spirit Lake Highway is a state highway, so they've got jurisdiction on whether or not to have warning lights and traffic lights and those kinds of controls, and whether or not to widen the lanes for safety purposes. So I'm not saying that your description is not accurate, but that's the jurisdiction that takes precedence. In terms of your request for the traffic study, I know that the Planning Commission's documents are certainly going to be public documents, and they are available. All you have to do is make a request at the Building and Planning Office. And the other thing I would recommend that you take a look at is the actual report, because quite often the reports include conditions to kind of modify questions and concerns that are brought up during discussions. So those are all public documents that are available from our Building and Planning Department.
I have a couple of statements also. Question for you, Kim, did you appear at that planning commission meeting?
No, I didn't, sir. I wasn't aware of it. And secondly, because of our antiquated technology, you can't zoom in, and I can't get there always, sir. So I'm addressing it now when I have the time to. And the
Well,
ability.
Well, I just asked a simple question.
And I answered it.
And the consequence of you not being there, or however you want to look at it, means by the time it comes before us, you will not be allowed to testify again on that issue.
Okay. Well, this is
And-
what I'm asking, because my concern is most of the public up here are very concerned, but we don't know where to voice it and where to go. And when the meetings are, and you can say, oh, ignorance to this and ignorance to that, but you guys have to, like, or the Planning Commission, include the community more. Because I do see that there were some provisional restrictions, which is just addressing not the traffic, but the wildlife buffer and what it's going to do to a protected Silver Lake.
Yeah, the other.
That's my concern.
Yeah, that's understood. The other statement about the 5-foot versus 10-foot setback, I listened to the whole planning commission, and I do not believe that was specifically addressed. So that is not a done deal.
Okay, well, it was in the article, sir, and it said that it was. It said that the area is unzoned, allowing all uses that aren't nuisances. And that there were conditional. So unless the article is reporting it incorrectly, then I don't know what to tell you. I'm just going from that. And also that the county building and planning staff recommended approval with conditions, including requiring a critical areas permit and county public works approval of the subdivision stormwater design, which I also want to address. The developer is required to complete that on-site mitigation for the impact on the wetland located there. But you guys did do the buffer. It says right here, the planning commission approved the developer's request for side yard setbacks of 5 feet instead of 10 to keep consistent with other phases and allow for only single-story houses in the subdivision. Well, the only other phase that has been built is phase 1, and it moves slowly, and there's a lot of things that were done incorrectly. And then we're going to give the responsibility to monitor the wastewater in that goes into the wetlands or the wasteland is by the subdivision HOA. That's ridiculous. Number one, the subdivisions in these rural areas up here are inept. In other words, we have them, we pay $25 a year and nobody enforces anything. So that makes me very nervous. I just want to address, I live here. I almost get killed every day and hit by a car because of the traffic up here that nothing's done about ever. Somebody put a 35-mile-an-hour sticker at the end, right at where the guardrail starts right before the lake, and it was taken down. That's what it should be. You have people fishing, you have the wildlife, the protected buffer wetland, crossing the roads that are killed constantly, not even counting human life. That's my concern. I have my grandchildren and other people's grandchildren, maybe even yours, that live up here. So I just ask you, I guess my question is, I need to know where we go, how we litigate this or get our voice out, that it definitely, just because a builder in Vancouver says that it's not going to affect the area, and then the planning commission says so as well, that's not acceptable. When we all know that it does, and we could just look at the traffic records to prove that. It's a huge concern of life. I've lost somebody on this highway more than once.
Thank you very much. That matter will be coming back before us.
Thank you for listening.
You bet. Anyone else? All right. Now I think we are done. I'm glad she called back in. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.